The following is copywritten intellectual property. Note that all rights are reserved to the writer. Any and all infringements in any capacity shall be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. With that being said, the listener, by choosing to proceed, understands and therefore agrees to the authority legally allotted to the writer. 12. Enlightenment Spiral. The theory of spiraling enlightenment is an illustration utilizing George Carlyle's mathematical scientific method in conjunction with the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of death model to describe the observer's optimal patterns while one perception is usurped by another. The illustration is a graphed spiral extending out from the event horizon in the center of the 4 quadrants for 5 revolutions. Each revolution is assigned one of the 5 stages beginning from furthest from the event horizon. 1. Denial, 2. Anger, 3. Bargaining, 4. Depression, 5. Acceptance, and 6. The event horizon. To that objectivity and subjectivity coexists autonomously, the observer must perform Mr. Carlyle's method to each stage of Mrs. Kubler-Ross's model. Thus, 1. Understanding, 2. Analysis, 3. Synthesis, and 4. Review/extend must be satisfied for all 5 to objectively reach the event horizon. 14. The nature of dream and creation. Inevitably the observer must dream before he can create, yet he creates his own dream before said dream can be brought to observation and fruition. Hence, this conundrum is eerily reminiscent to the effect of his mortality theory, there in which perspective conjecture is the only definable connotation objectively allotted. Therefore, what we have dreamed we have also created regardless if the observer is cognizant or if the dream and or creation is tangible. If the observer's conjecture is left unsubstantiated, then the nature of the conclusion is in direct correlation to the observer's dispositions. Due to the pervasive nature of dream and creation being the prerequisite for any conceivable action and the act of conception itself, it is plausible for the observer to deduce that every conception has a measurable efficacy in relation to the effort exerted in which it is observed. Thus, every conception fathomed with conjectured validity will influence the nature of what dreams may come. To quote one of his favorite and more relevant examples of the potentials within the lucid efficacy of the collective conscious is this modern circle jerk to the apocalypse. He is quoted as, "Had we nothing better as a species than to rule our trite existences with such conviction that we pine for our inevitable bereavement, for within our collective terror of suffering such in isolation we will ensure that we shall all act in unity once, and die." In essence, humanity's most notable trait is the ability to make their dreams come to fruition, even if such is a nightmare. See the Zeitgeist's defining theories of ascension and intent. Examples of Zeitgeist's defining theories of ascension and intent. 1. Infection and extortion of the collective conscious. Infection and extortion of the collective conscious is the tactic of hypersaturating all conveyed mediums with premeditated subversion to assert dominance over the evolution of communicated thought. He will engage all his denoted tactics to build conjecture about him. He will begin with targets who lack pre-existing relations and know him intimately, thus causing them to talk to their associates about their speculations of him, commonly in a frantic and bewildered and or condescending fashion. He will then select targets who are total strangers to build a separate reputation entity from himself which tends to breed more condescending conjecture by nature. He will continue to do so until he perceives references of his effigy presented in all mediums by independent conjecture. He will then reference said media effigies in group setting to so said group with conjecture pertaining to the notion of his theories being isolated to his imagination. This act also facilitates his benign hypnosis tactic for any potential targets outside said group, which usually leads to said targets levying their conjecture at him through walls form adjacent room. An example. He will continue to conduct in these methods until a tangible socio-awareness is right for his usurpation via the means of presenting himself as the subject of conjecture and will then capitalize on the position in a form that will gain media attention while concealing his objectives. After he obtains media coverage, he will then repeat his tactics in this medium until he has cultivated enough publicity and conjecture to engage phase 2 of his ascension. 2. Nexus Empire Engine. The Nexus Empire Engine is his created form that engages all mediums is designed to facilitate and exacerbate his public dissection. To maximize the engine's efficacy, the public conjecture must be characterized in an efficient manner while maintaining the commenting individual's plausible deniability. With this in mindset, he will most likely choose a pre-existing medium that has facilitated these pertinent objectives. Hence, he will use the zodiac to due to its pervasive sociological attributes and its prerequisite for the sign or observer of which to project themselves into the birth date designated character to gain the sense of exterior validation from the theory. with the 12 designation that he has picked against him, self-reinforcing the 12 spheral inclination of strength and number is critical to misdirect their collective attentions away from the Christ-like martyrdom illusion, parallel and keep them focused on the orgiastic self-aggrandizing validation they gain through the illusion of their conjecture's efficacy, receiving exterior validation through this form. He will conduct in this fashion until this form's efficacy has infected every conceivable medium. It is at this point he will fabricate and implement the exterior conjecture that implies the notion of his divinity in light of his pervasive creation. Inevitably, he will embrace this fabrication, thus engaging the third phase of his ascension. 3. Theophobic resonance cascade. The theophobic resonance cascade is his tactic of manipulation to engage the collective paranoia of the impending apocalypse by subjecting the collective conscious to a mass existential crisis during which he is crucified and dissected in the all-media conduits and mediums for the blatant arrogance to be claimed and claim himself omnipotent, during which he shall remand himself to his disciplines of silence to further enrage his targets and accusers' conjecture to their full exacerbated potentials of their ignorance and malice. He shall maintain his plausible deniability until the efficacy of relinquishing it and the guise of his target's accusations denotes that the entire process that has brought the species to this apocalyptic impasse has been of their flagellant conjecture and need for a scapegoat to expunge them of such. In all probability they'll just kill him and later themselves. Regardless of which resolution comes to fruition, the inevitable aftermath will either result in the species expunging themselves from existence as a whole, i.e. extinction, or the actualization of his fourth phase of ascension. 4. Perpetual societal sustenance. The perpetual societal sustenance theory is his interpretation of the utopian vision of which his species believes it is capable of achieving. A state in which where all inscrutable incarnations of exterior indication of one entity's value compared to another is rendered obsolete, during which money, predation, and tyranny are subject to extinction. The first indication would be the species focusing of the collective conscious potential to make the basic necessities of life available for the species as a whole. This act alone would facilitate the end of the only legitimate justification for warfare amongst business and the species as a whole. Thus, the enablement of the species to collectively dream of its true desires and potentials in a societal medium of which is capable of actualizing its own potential. In short, the incarnation of the species embracing the collective nature of dream and creation.